I said, if I were going to direct a film, he became one of my two producers, Diane Perlman and Brian Long is his name, actually launched the film out into the world as a feature film or whatever.
For years, Karen Allen was one of Hollywood's most loved faces, the fearless heroine of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the girl next door with a spark audiences couldn't forget. Then, almost overnight, she seemed to disappear from the spotlight. No big scandal. No dramatic goodbye. Just silence. Fans were left wondering what really happened to her career, and why such a beloved actress stepped away when fame was still within reach. Now, at 74, Karen Allen is finally sharing the truth about the choices she made, the quiet struggles she faced behind the scenes, and the moment she realized walking away from Hollywood might be the only way to save herself. This isn't just about a career that slowed down. It's about the hidden price of fame and the strength it takes to choose peace over applause. On October 5, 1951, Karen Allen was born in Carrollton, Illinois. But that place was only temporary. Her father worked as an FBI agent, and her mother was a university professor. Her family moved constantly and settled in Washington, D.C. Karen was a quiet, observant child who liked reading and watching. She was also drawn to storytelling and studied at the University of Maryland. After some odd jobs and exploring the country, she found herself drawn to New York City, where she studied at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute, and that's where her journey began. Around this time, her personality made her stand out. Before her career began, she made her stage debut. In the late 70s, she appeared in experimental theater productions. The emotional transparency she displayed on the stage didn't stay confined to the theater for long. When she stepped in front of a camera, that same sincerity translated effortlessly, giving her screen presence a rare kind of intimacy. While her craft was grounded in method training, there was nothing showy about her performances. She worked with quiet precision, layering her characters with delicate emotional detail that made them feel astonishingly real. Stardom was never her objective. Authenticity was. And it was that relentless devotion to emotional truth that eventually opened the door to one of the most legendary roles in blockbuster cinema. Karen Allen stepped into films in 1978 with National Lampoon's Animal House, a rowdy campus comedy that exploded into a cultural phenomenon. The movie thrived on outrageous humor and oversized personalities, yet amid the chaos, Allen brought something unexpectedly human. As Katie, the thoughtful and steady girlfriend of Boone, she became the quiet anchor in a world spinning with frat house absurdity. It would have been easy to fade into the background of such an anarchic ensemble, but her restraint, that calm intelligence in her eyes, made the character feel grounded and real. The film went on to become one of the highest-grossing comedies of its time, and though she wasn't its loudest presence, she was among its most memorable. Then came 1981, the year everything changed. When Steven Spielberg cast her as Marion Ravenwood in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Karen Allen didn't just enter a blockbuster, she claimed it. From her first scene, matching men shot for shot in a smoky Nepalese bar, she reshaped what could have been a typical damsel into something far more formidable. Marion was sharp-witted, hot-tempered, wounded, and brave. She loved fiercely and fought harder. In Allen's hands, she was never a side note to Indiana Jones. She was his equal, sometimes even his reckoning. Her chemistry with Harrison Ford crackled with tension, part romance, part rivalry, giving the adventure emotional stakes beneath the spectacle. The film became a global sensation, earning over $300 million and redefining the modern action-adventure genre. Overnight, Allen became a household name. And yet, in a move that feels almost bittersweet in hindsight, she didn't chase the machinery of fame. She resisted the easy path of franchise stardom, choosing instead roles that stirred her curiosity. Some projects passed quietly, without fanfare, but they revealed something essential about her spirit. Karen Allen was never chasing headlines. She was chasing truth, the kind that lingers long after the lights dim and the applause fades. After Raiders of the Lost Ark turned her into an international name, Karen Allen stood at a crossroads many actors only dream of. Hollywood was ready to package her into the next big franchise, to lock her into contracts and sequels. But instead of sprinting toward guaranteed fame, she slowed down. She chose curiosity over commerce. In 1984, she starred opposite Jeff Bridges in Starman, directed by John Carpenter. The story was unusual. A lonely alien takes the form of a woman's deceased husband. But Allen made its emotional core feel achingly real. As Jenny Hayden, she wasn't merely reacting to science fiction spectacle. She embodied grief in motion, a woman navigating heartbreak, disbelief, tenderness, and fragile hope all at once. With quiet restraint, she anchored the film's otherworldly premise in something unmistakably human. Though it wasn't a runaway box office hit, Starman found devoted audiences over time, and her performance remains one of the most delicate of her career. A few years later, she stepped into lighter territory with Scrooged, starring Bill Murray. In this modern retelling of A Christmas Carol, Allen played Claire Phillips, the compassionate former love of Murray's hardened television executive. Amid the film's biting satire and chaotic humor, she radiated warmth. Once again, she became the emotional compass, the steady presence reminding both the protagonist and the audience what truly mattered. Throughout the 1980s, she continued working steadily, gravitating toward character-driven pieces like Until September and The Glass Menagerie. These projects leaned into her theatrical roots, allowing her to explore nuance rather than spectacle. By the decade's end, however, her name appeared less frequently in bold headlines. In an industry increasingly intoxicated by celebrity culture and tabloid noise, her quiet selectiveness was mistaken for absence. Some assumed she had faded away, but she hadn't vanished. She had simply stepped off the treadmill of constant visibility. Karen Allen was never chasing fame for its own sake. She was following instinct, choosing work with intention. And as the 1990s approached, she was preparing once again to redefine her path on her own terms. As the 1990s came, Karen made a choice that surprised many, and only a few would take. She pulled back from Hollywood and fame. No dramatic exit, no scandal, no career downfall, or a fading career. In fact, it was simple. She wanted a different life, peaceful and private. In 1990, Karen became the mother of a son, Nicholas, and everything shifted for good. In interviews, she said she wants to be a good mother, not someone who is gone for months, raising a child through some calls and visits in months. So she moved to Western Massachusetts, far from the eyes of Los Angeles and New York. Allen didn't leave acting entirely. She appeared in occasional TV, movies, and independent movies. She turned down many bigger roles, but she refused, in case they take them away from the home. Her roles during this period were carefully chosen. She also made a comeback to the stage, where she had control over her schedule and role. But her retreat wasn't only about geography. It was philosophical. In Great Barrington, Massachusetts, she founded Karen Allen Fiber Arts, a textile business where she designed and crafted knitwear by hand. The work was slow, tactile, and personal, a stark contrast to the bright glare of film sets and red carpets. She once described it as another form of storytelling, one woven with thread instead of dialogue. There was something poetic about that shift. From epic adventures on screen to the quiet rhythm of yarn slipping through her fingers, this chapter of her life unfolded without fanfare. In an industry known for elevating stars only to discard them, Karen Allen stepped away on her own terms. She taught, she created, she raised her son in calm surroundings. To those scanning tabloids and wondering where she had gone, it may have seemed like a disappearance. But she hadn't faded. She had simply chosen a different horizon, one defined not by applause, but by intention. In 2008, nearly 30 years after she first left, audiences breathless with a right hook aimed at a certain fedora-wearing archaeologist, Karen Allen stepped back into the world that had made her unforgettable. With Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, she returned as Marion Ravenwood, not as a relic of the past, but as a woman who had lived, endured, and grown. For longtime fans of Raiders of the Lost Ark, her reappearance carried a rush of emotion that no special effect could replicate. There she was, still sharp, still spirited, still capable of matching Indiana Jones beat for beat. Time had added dimension, not diminished her fire. In a film often driven by large-scale spectacle, Allen brought something steadier and more intimate. She grounded the adventure with warmth and authenticity, making the story feel less like a nostalgic echo and more like a genuine continuation. Marion was no longer just the quick-witted bar owner from Nepal. She had become a mother, a partner, a woman shaped by years beyond the frame. Her dynamic with Harrison Ford had softened into something richer, less sparring, more shared history. Beneath the action and bravado, there was tenderness. That emotional thread gave the film a pulse it might otherwise have lacked. In interviews at the time, Allen spoke of how surreal it felt to inhabit Marion again, to revisit a role that had defined so much of her public identity. But this wasn't about recreating youth or chasing applause. It was about honoring where she had been while embracing who she had become. For younger viewers encountering Marion for the first time, the film served as a quiet revelation. Karen Allen's power had never relied on spectacle. It lived in her balance of grit and grace, strength and vulnerability. Her return wasn't a bid to reclaim Hollywood. It was a reminder, gentle but unmistakable, that she had always been more than a supporting player in someone else's legend. She was Marion Ravenwood. And that kind of presence doesn't fade with time. After Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull reintroduced her to a new generation, Karen Allen once again faced a familiar choice. Hollywood was paying attention. Doors were open. But as she had done before, she quietly stepped away from the noise instead of leaning into it. There were no headline-grabbing deals, no sudden bid to reclaim blockbuster status. She returned to what had always sustained her: intimate, character-driven work. Throughout the 2000s, she appeared in independent films such as White Irish Drinkers, Year by the Sea, and Colwell. The last of these, a quiet portrait of a small-town postmaster confronting forced retirement, earned her some of the strongest reviews of her career. There was nothing flashy about the performance. It was inward, measured, deeply human. She didn't demand attention, she invited it. In an industry that often rewards volume, Allen proved once more that stillness can be just as commanding. The stage, however, remained her truest creative refuge. In 2012, she directed a production of Frankie and Johnny in The Clair de Lune with the Berkshire Theatre Group, marking her directorial debut. Theatre had been her first love, and it continued to offer something film rarely could: immediacy, connection, and control over the rhythm of her work. Over time, she also embraced teaching, guiding young actors and directors with the same thoughtful care that defined her own performances. In interviews, she has spoken about the quiet fulfillment of mentoring artists as they begin to discover their voices, a legacy measured not in box office numbers, but in influence. Rooted still in Massachusetts, she continues to run Karen Allen Fiber Arts, her knitwear shop in Great Barrington. It isn't a vanity project or a celebrity brand extension. It's tactile, personal, deliberate, much like her career. Thread by thread, roll by roll, she has built a life centered not on fame, but on meaning. Karen Allen never chased the spotlight for long. Instead, she chose work that felt honest, whether on screen, on stage, or in the quiet rhythm of a knitting studio. And perhaps that is her most enduring performance of all, a life lived with intention, far from the glare, yet never truly out of sight. Karen Allen's later years in film haven't been driven by splashy premieres or relentless publicity. Instead, she has shaped a career defined by nuance, patience, and emotional depth. While others followed the predictable arc of fame, she chose a quieter evolution, one that allowed her to grow not only as a performer, but as a woman determined to live deliberately. In 2023, she made a brief, tender appearance in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, offering a soft, reflective coda to Marion Ravenwood's long journey. It was a small moment, but it carried decades of history, reminding audiences how vital her presence had always been. Off-screen, Allen's life has been equally intentional. She married actor Cale Brown in 1988, and though the marriage eventually ended in divorce, it brought the birth of her son Nicholas, the role she has often described as her most meaningful. Karen Allen never relied on spectacle to sustain her legacy. Whether in sweeping adventures or intimate dramas, she brought honesty, intelligence, and quiet strength. She stepped away when Hollywood no longer aligned with her values, choosing instead a life rooted in craft, family, and authenticity, a path less visible perhaps, but infinitely her own.